going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And if you missed last week, we did review the introduction of the two new Kaldheim Planeswalkers, so we encourage you to check that out. We had a fair bit to say. It wasn't exactly a story, but it was Vorthos related, and so we definitely had feelings and opinions, so we encourage you to check that out. And we did say last week that if there were more Kaldheim stories this week, that we would review them, which there were not, but we did find out that they will be coming. They will be the same as Zendikar Rising, where you will have the main stories and the side stories. So if you missed how we reviewed Zendikar Rising, when those stories come out, we will have JARs up once a week to review both stories that have been released up to that time. So if they're doing Wednesday and Friday again, then the first Wednesday that is released, since last time it went main story first, then side story, the first JAR that we do will likely only be the main story, and then the next JAR will be side story, then main, then side, then main, etc. until we're done. So that's just for your information. Also, speaking of if you missed this past Monday's video, we opened a gift edition of Zendikar Rising, so we encourage you to check that out, with this being the holiday, or the Christmas week. But also, you may have missed this. Wizards sending us this amazing holiday gift. If you can't see it, don't worry. There's a much better shot of it from Monday's video. So we encourage you to check that out. And again, a huge, huge thank you to Wizards for this awesome gift. Really brought a smile and maybe a little bit more to my face. So thank you for that. That was really, really cool. We were super happy to have that. So this week, as the title says down below, we are here to review more of the Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch stories. We've been doing this in honor of the fact that we were just in Zendikar again for Zendikar Rising, and we have never reviewed these stories on the channel, although we have read them previously, but it has been quite some time. So this week we are here for that story number 10, The Believer's Pilgrimage by Doug Beyer. Also, I guess I should mention that because this is the Christmas week, and today, when this video is going up, is Christmas Eve, to all who celebrate, from us here at Geek for All to you, the merriest of Christmases. We hope that you are all able to celebrate however you are able to celebrate, and that you and your family and your loved ones are continuing to stay safe and happy and healthy in this crazy year of 2020 as it comes to a close. And if you are in need of a little bit of friendship, companionship, we will be streaming live on Christmas Day, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, playing more of Marvel's Avengers, the new game from 2020.
Yes.
So if you are unable to celebrate with family, if you do not celebrate Christmas, and you are looking for something to do on the evening of the 25th...
take your mind off the fact that it's Christmas,
yeah,
because that can be a little bit annoying.
Sure. So whatever your need is, we will be there for you. Like I said, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. right here on this channel. We hope that if you are available, you will come to join us. And don't worry if you miss it. The VOD will go up on Video Games for All later. So that is probably the longest, self-promo introduction that we've done at the beginning of one of these. But so apologies for that. Thank you for bearing with us. But on to this review of this story. I would say my quick review at the top is I really enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Even though
it was mostly about Jace.
Well, but again, we'll talk about this in the full review, but it seems like they really, back then, they were really leaning into, he's not likable, deal with it. He's good at what he does, but that's about the end of it. He otherwise kind of sucks. So, yeah,
But I felt he was fine in this one.
Yeah, like I said, I have some things to say, but nothing crazy.
Yeah.
It's not another one of those, oh my god, Jace is a jerk, like a couple weeks ago.
Right, no. Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. My quick review is you should go read it. And if you're unaware of how we do these videos, because this is an older story, check the description down below. The top link will be a link to this story, so we encourage you to go read that if you are interested in reminding yourself or reading it for the first time if you never have. And then, of course, we encourage you to come back here and join us in this discussion. So on to the full review itself. This story was basically Jace and Jorian starting their journey to the Eye of Ugin to try to get information on the Hedron network, or the puzzle of ley lines.
Right.
I was surprised, I mean, talking about, Jace being unlikable, I was surprised twice at the beginning of the story, and it kind of branched into the rest of it, right? There was like a sub-theme running through it, of Jace and his mind powers, right? And that they mention somebody coming up behind Jace, like walking up behind him, and he just goes, oh, you're Jorian, right? Not facing her,
right.
Not at all, just then turns around and sees that it's her. Later on, somebody's coming up behind he and Jorian, and he's like, oh, hey, Gideon, and then turns around and sees Gideon.
Right.
And it hit differently for me. It really did, because I'm so used to modern Jace, where he gets told by the Gatewatch all the time, like, hey, dude, super rude.
Back off.
Super rude to do that. Like, ask first. And technically, he asks, well, he, in his own way, asks Jorian before going into her mind to try to check on that information that then leads them to knowing that they have to go to the Eye of Ugin.
But then he doesn't check later.
Well, and that we'll talk about that when we get to the end, because that's something that I wanted to touch on. But yes, you're right. Then the ending of the story has him altering minds, which was foreshadowed by Jorian's question in the beginning of if he could do that or not. I think that ending part was somewhat justified, to be fair, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, it was interesting to me that he's just so flippant about, like, oh, who's coming up behind me? Oh, it's Jorian. Who's coming up behind me? Oh, it's Gideon. Like, the only way you knew that is by reading at least their surface thoughts, just to know who it is that you're hearing. And that's not okay. People aren't okay with that. That's kind of a theme of telepathy in a lot of pop culture. The X-Men, like Professor Xavier and Jean Grey, know that it's not cool to just be in people's minds without their permission.
At the same time, like, someone coming up behind you, you might not have the choice. Like, your mind might just go there, and then you say, oh, okay, you have to, like, suck yourself back out, kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, again, I am most familiar with the X-Men, so I know a lot of, like, Professor Xavier, Jean Grey type references. If the telepathy is similar here, which I believe it is based on what I've been reading previously, the best way to control that type of a situation is just with control and knowledge of your powers and ability. Mm-hmm. And Jace is a very, very powerful mind mage. And so, arguably, he should be able to keep it in check at all times. It may require extra focus, but he's a blue mind mage. Like, that's kind of his thing, right, is having that type of focus to be able to, like, not just read the minds of anybody that walks up on them, right? When you first gain your powers, maybe, you're just like, right, oh god, I can't not do this.
Right, because, I mean, if you're using the Jean Grey Xavier analysis, mm-hmm, it's similar to that of Jean Grey and Xavier. Like, Xavier having to, like, teach Jean how to, like, kind of get those voices out of her head, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when she first gets her power, she's like, oh my god, everybody just shut up. Like,
right,
it
was just there.
Yeah, and you can't turn it off.
She wasn't being intrusive.
Right.
They were being intrusive on her.
Yeah.
But it was inadvertent.
Right, it was her powers, not her herself. Right. Like, she wasn't,
her,
like,
or
purposely
them,
doing it.
But it was just, what was happening to her.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't fully buy that. I hear you on that, mm-hmm, absolutely. I just, for Jace, I don't fully buy it.
Right,
but
no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Then you made a comment, which I thought was kind of interesting, that Gideon comes up to the two of them, and as I mentioned, and Jace kind of says, okay, well, we're leaving, and hey, why don't you come with us? Like, we are going to be on this trek. It's going to be kind of tough. He doesn't say it, but it's like, we're going to need you to kill these Eldrazi, right, if we come across them, because you're kind of that guy.
Right.
And Gideon's like, I have to stay here with the refugees, which I totally agree with, right, by the way. Like, it makes perfect sense. Like, these people need me. But he said something which I agree with your assessment of it, but he made the comment of, you two can't leave. If you leave, all of these refugees are dead, and you two will be dead. I agree that
my thought was like, why will the refugees be dead? Like, I mean, I guess if how the order in which you said that was, you guys are going to die, and as a result of that, the refugees will die.
Sure.
Because no one will fix the Hedron situation.
Right, and he
then
literally...
I can understand it, but that's not what he said.
No, and that's a good point, because if he'd flipped it, it would have made more sense. Like, if you guys die, we can't solve the puzzle of the Hedrons, and we cannot stop the Eldrazi because... You know, I got this Searle and it's real good, but I can't kill Titans with it.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought of that. That absolutely makes perfect sense. That if they flipped it, it would make sense. But he didn't. He specifically said, the refugees will die and you will die. And I don't fully buy that. I don't get it. Because, like, if they succeed on their mission, then they don't. The Eldrazi won't kill you all, hopefully. Like, that's kind of the idea.
Right.
So, yeah, really good point. And as with anything that we ever talk about on any JaARs, we would love to hear your opinions down in the comments below. Please. If you agree, disagree, we would love to hear from you. Because if it's something that we haven't thought of, that's super helpful. And if it's something that is just a different point of view, we always love to hear that as well. So definitely the comment section down below, that is what that is for. And I even wrote, Gideon thinks that they all need to stay together or they'll all die. He thinks that even before...
split the party.
Right, exactly. But he thinks that even before he finds out that Nissa left. Like, again, if he had found out that Nissa had left first and was like, great, now she's gone and now you're leaving too, we're definitely dead now.
Right.
He didn't even know she was gone. Jace had to tell him that Nissa left. So... why, again, more of Amy's point, why does he think that the refugees are dead?
Because never split the party. Not because X, Y, Z. And splitting the party might cause X. It's because never split the party. You know? Yeah,
and I mean, you know, the wizard, the druid, and the fighter all, staying together seems like a pretty good idea. But yeah, no, that, interesting. Then I thought it was hilarious that Jace is talking to Jorian on their journey because spoilers, they go, and that's when we get to the moment where Jory says, "Couldn't you have just convinced him that it was a good idea?" And Jace is like, "Yeah, I could have. I considered every possibility, but I didn't want to do that."
Right.
And then on that journey, she makes a comment to him or whatever, and Jace says, I've been told I'm not an easy person to be friends with." Which is so good.
Like, correct. But,
so good.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it earlier, but I don't know. I think he was fairly likable in this story.
I think he was fine. I think that Jory was getting to know him and liked him as her traveling companion and like a conversationalist, you know, and like learning things about him and etc. So yeah, I can agree with that to a degree. I think when we get to the end, like I said, I've got things to mention with that. But
okay, so maybe you're attributing it a bit more to Jorian's curiosity than to Jace's likability.
Oh, okay, sure, because he's got all this information for her. Yeah, kind of. There were a couple of lines, specific like lines in this story that you really enjoyed. Not that I didn't, but that you like made a point of like, oh my god, that's hilarious.
Yeah, like write that down.
Yeah,
because we gotta remember that.
So there's two of them that I did write down. First was when Jace is about to like rappel down or belay down the rocks with Ailey, who came and found them and was offering to save them, and Jace. Kind of the story says Jace had 8 or 9 distinct bad feelings about this.
Right. It's just like, yes.
Before rappelling down. It's really funny.
So, yeah. He didn't have a bad feeling about this. He had 8 or 9 very specific bad feelings about it.
And yet, ironically, I'm relatively certain not a single one of them was, if we go with this person, we are going to meet an Eldrazi Titan. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Right. So,
but he's a mind mage, too. I mean, like, so there's an element of did he get 8 or 9 distinct feelings as opposed to 1 because of that power versus, Jorian got 1.
Yeah. Well, it definitely
Or none.
it definitely seems like he didn't read her mind, right? Like,
Yeah.
you probably would have known, like, okay, we're taking these offerings to the Titan, or when Ailey said, "Come with me to the sanctuary," that the sanctuary would have been to the god. Now, technically, I didn't write it down, but there was a name that Ailey had for Ulamog as a god. And it was like, where you're an offering to so-and-so, second name Ula. Now we know that Ula is the name that at least the merfolk gave the Eldrazi Titans as when they were worshipped as godlike figures.
Well, Ulamog specifically.
Sure, Ulamog, yes, and then different names for different for the different Titans. But I don't know. So I guess even if Jace had read the surface thoughts like he did with Jorian earlier and Gideon earlier, he may have only heard that random name of, like, it's the sanctuary worshipping this god that it's not Ula, it's not Ulamog, it's this. And to that, he would have been like, okay, I'm not familiar with that god, but it's a god of Zendikar. I'm not from here, so.
Right.
So maybe that makes sense.
I don't even go here.
So maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I have no idea. But there was that. Then they are in front of Ulamog, and so the next line that comes up is Jace saying that he doesn't feel right. Like he feels awful standing in front of this giant Titan. The air felt wrong.
Yeah.
Is the line that was used. It's really good. It's really good. I mean, especially, like, then he references the fact that, like, it feels like the gravity has shifted and that he's being pulled towards it. And maybe he kind of mentions Krill being sucked into a whale's mouth.
Yeah.
Right? And Ulamog is the ceaseless hunger, right? Mm-hmm. So it's that idea of Ulamog just wanting to absorb everything around it, and that maybe he exudes this presence of, I'm drawing everything around me in.
Right.
Or
like there's a black hole surrounding it.
Right. And Jace, a couple of times today in this story, has those moments of, like, I'm imagining my own death. Like, really weird. Like, I mean, I get the...
Like, this level of, like, understanding his own mortality and his own lack of power, which is uncharacteristic for him typically, you know, because he's so powerful, to kind of be brought down a peg.
Yeah.
Multiple times in one story.
Yeah, it was very weird. Like, the second one, which I'll talk about first since we were talking about it just now, was when he met Ulamog, and he said he kind of, for a moment, pictured himself dissolving, disintegrating, the being absorbed by Ulamog or disintegrated by Ulamog or whatever. That's what he thought of at that point for, like, a brief moment. And then he didn't.
Yeah.
Right, and then he had the plan of, so cool, just looking at all of the priests around him that were trying to sacrifice he and Jorian to Ulamog, and just making them think that they had just burst into flames.
Right.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I loved that. And
it's a cool concept, but the way that they worded it made it difficult for me to understand what was happening.
I think that was intentional, because I think even though we were hearing it from Jace's perspective, I think we were supposed to be, like, thinking of it as if we were Jorian.
Yeah.
And so then when Jorian's like, what the hell? You're not a pyromancer. And Jason's like, yeah, but they don't know that. And Jorian turns around and there's nothing wrong. There's just people yelling and patting themselves and rolling around on the ground. And
so she originally saw the flames then.
Yes.
And now she's not seeing the flames.
Well, because they were full illusionary flames that all of them saw. And then as they walked away, I guess Jace only kept it on them and didn't then removed it from her because she doesn't need to be fooled by those illusions. So Yeah. I mean, so cool. What an awesome way. Because you don't need to kill them. You just need to get away. Because they're not the threat. There's a giant titan.
I mean,
that's the threat.
I think you need to kill them. If it was me, I would have killed them. Because what they are doing is... Like, there are refugees because there are Eldrazi.
Yeah.
But... Like, they're taking the refugees and throwing them at the Eldrazi. Like,
sure.
So they need to stop.
Sure. I guess the only thing that I can think of is if you look at Jace and Jorian, they're not fighters. Like, they can protect themselves as needed, but that's it. One-on-one against the Eldrazi, Jace and Jorian are not going to do well. That's why when they came up in their coach along that group of Eldrazi, Jace was like, we got to get the hell out of here, you know, like, go in a different direction. Like, we can't go up against these things.
Somewhere else.
Right, Jory had a spear. So, like, technically, while they're rolling around on the ground or patting themselves out, Jory could have walked up and, like, stuck the spear in their neck. And, like, walked to the next one and done it again or whatever. But, like...
It would have stopped working. Like... They would have realized that they needed to, like, run away if she started stabbing people in the neck with a spear. That's not a fast enough...
Maybe.
You know,
maybe.
It's not a gun.
Again, right. But again, I mean, that's you know, that's a whole different, like, discussion of, like, what could they have done, should they have done? Because, like, if the other ones are so preoccupied with, I'm on fire, they might not notice, oh, that person just got stabbed in the neck. Because they might be on the ground, rolling around, trying to put out the flames, or, like, looking down at themselves.
Would.
Maybe. Again, that's so far afield of, like, what they ended up doing. Could Jace have just shut down their minds? Would that have caused too much time or too much of his mental energy to do so? Who the hell knows? But that's not what they did. All they needed to do was get out of there. Because, yes, their main concern at that point pivoted from Eye of Ugin to Eye of Ugin and warning the refugees already at Seagate of the problem. If there are more people that are trying to get to Seagate that get stopped by these priests in the future, okay, that sucks, but you've got hundreds of people over at Seagate who are going to be destroyed. The plane will be destroyed in the process. We've got bigger problems. You know, it's like...
What I didn't love about that is that Jace came to this conclusion of how important it was to not congregate people.
Yes.
You know, because the concentrations of energy drew them.
Sure.
He didn't say that to Jorian before he sent her to go warn Seagate.
I kind of took that as because you can't have... he was talking about the fact that they had to be in those places because they're the only places that can sustain life. You can't live on the chalky dust that's left over from the Eldrazi corruption. So you have to congregate in that way. The issue is, it's then a target for the Eldrazi to come up and very easily just go, oh cool, munch, and you're all gone all at once. Because...
Like making noise in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it like draws them in.
A quiet place.
You get... Yeah, exactly. Also. It draws them in, you get cornered, right, or surrounded, and then there's nowhere else for you to go, right? You're just standing on that little plot, and then you're gone. So, sure, the idea of don't congregate is an issue, but the solution is what? There is no other solution except find other places, like split up into many other places and whatever.
Well, I'm not even suggesting that they split up, but it would be good information for them to have to know that Jace, like, experienced knowing that these congregations of people attract them from a distance.
Sure, but how do they fix it? If you're not telling them to...
I'm not saying they have to fix it. I'm just saying it might be useful for them to have that information.
Okay. How? How would it be useful?
I don't know.
Okay.
but they would find out later.
Okay.
But they certainly wouldn't find out later if they didn't have the information.
Okay. Interesting.
Because it's not likely that they would come to that conclusion the way that Jace did.
Sure.
I mean, you can use your, common sense to figure that, yeah, they're going to start following, they're going to steer clear of areas that are already chalky because they're already chalky and, keep coming and finding things to eat. But a lack of understanding that they're actually drawn to you.
Sure.
Because your concentration of energies as a group of people and living land underneath you is a beacon that they follow.
Okay.
That's, those two things are different, even though the results might not be that different. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I don't know that I fully buy the concept, but I absolutely understand your point. And if people have strong opinions, comment section down below, as always. I found it fascinating. I don't know that I realized this up until now. I mean, the Eldrazi spawn or scions, the little guys, in Battle for Zendikar, looked like tongues. Right? They had the little legs and they would walk forward, but the back end looked like a big, long, gross tongue. And I always said, I was like, they just look like tongues. It's so gross. Why do they look like tongues? And in this story, it made perfect sense. The scions are going out, and Jace realizes this. The scions are going out, as Amy was just pointing out, kind of trying to corral people into particular areas. They're trying to find the concentrations of individuals and taste for them. Because Ulamog is hungry. And so Ulamog wants to find large concentrations of energy, as Amy just said. And so these Eldrazi scions look like tongues because they're going out and tasting the world so that Ulamog knows where to concentrate his energy to have the best meal. Disgustingly brilliant. Brilliant. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Because, again, to me, I was just like, why do they look like tongues? That's so gross. And now, perfect sense. Love it. Absolutely love it. Really, really good.
And so it's interesting that, the stuff that they touch and eat or, steal the energy from is chalky.
Yeah.
Because that chalky taste would deter them. And their tongues would then, find the stuff that didn't taste chalky.
Correct.
And tasted like something.
Yeah. And again, Jace mentions the mana kind of being destroyed by Ulamog or eaten up by Ulamog in the process of Ulamog just moving forward. And so then we get to the ending where Jace knows someone's got to go warn Seagate that Ulamog is coming. Kind of a big deal. But they also have to still get to the Eye of Ugin. Because warning them that Ulamog is coming won't do anything, because how the hell do you kill Ulamog? You don't. You solve the mystery of the Hedrons, or the puzzle of the ley lines. And so one of them has to go one way, one of them has to go the other way. Because Jace is the only one who can figure out the puzzle of the ley lines, because otherwise Jorian would have already done it.
Right.
He knows that Jorian has to be the one to go back to warn them. But they're not going to have time to go warn Seagate and then go back out to the Eye, so they have to split up. They know they do. Or at least Jace feels like they both know that they do.
Right.
And so Jorian is super resistant to it. She's like, I'm not letting you go alone. You're going to die.
Right.
Just come back with me. I'm your guide. Come back with me. We'll warn them, and then we'll head back out again. We have to do it this way. And Jace knows that makes no sense.
Right.
Again, feels that he knows, right? So Jace is saying, no, don't do that.
Or not necessarily that it makes no sense, but that they just don't have time for it.
That it wouldn't work. Yeah. So what does Jace do? Well, it was foreshadowed in the beginning. When Jorian asked him if he could, he changed her mind. And he made her think it was her idea. Excuse me, which works. did you have thoughts on that? We were kind of hinting at it earlier, but I want to know what you have to, because I have thoughts.
I think he saw a level of importance to changing her mind that he didn't see in Gideon's.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
And changing Gideon's mind.
Yeah.
So I think he felt that the ends justified the means.
Yeah, I think seeing Ulamog really spooked him.
Right.
Really spooked him. And I mean, to be fair, it should have. But I think...
And like you said before, they did reference a couple of times in this story, him kind of really seeing how simple it would be for him to just die.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, so...
Oh, yeah, the other way that I didn't mention before was when they were belaying down the rock, he imagined illusory versions of himself alongside him climbing down and them all falling to their deaths. And it made him feel better. He said he felt comforted by that. What? Dude.
Creepy as
not
fuck.
okay. Anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there, but still not okay.
Yeah. It's very weird.
So,
and then he was like, better than me, and it's like...
Yeah, it's like I don't know how them falling means that you're not falling.
Right. Like,
that's fine. Whatever.
How? Like that really just means that there's no one there to help you when you start to fall. And it's pretty likely you will, as everyone around you just did.
Well, I mean, they're illusions. They wouldn't be able to help him anyway.
That's not the point.
I know. And so, okay. So my thoughts on this ending were, I didn't love it as much. And here's why. Earlier in the story, we see Jace read Jory's mind, read Gideon's mind. Again, maybe just surface thoughts, but he does it. Then Jory asks, couldn't you have just changed Gideon's mind? And Jace says, well, yeah, technically, but, I didn't. He doesn't even say, I didn't want to, or it's not okay, or it's rude to do that. He just didn't. And at no point does Jory or Gideon say to him, hey man, not cool, right? We will see that later.
No, but Jory asked him about it, because
Sure.
he wanted to find out what his motivations would be for doing so or not doing so.
Sure. My point is, you get to this ending, and I think the ending would have been more impactful had it been a change in any way. But it wasn't. Because at the beginning of the story, he was reading people's minds, right? He chose not to change Gideon's mind, sure. But he did so because, he, to a degree, trusts Gideon, right? Like,
right.
Gideon's point is, I have to stay here to keep these people safe. If Jace took Gideon away, the refugees probably would have just all died.
Right.
And so it would have been Jace's fault that all of those refugees were dead because he didn't leave Gideon behind. Or, yeah, didn't let Gideon stay behind. And took him with him. So instead, he and Jorianne had to go off on their own. He didn't read the mind of Ailey, even though this is a complete stranger trying to save you. And I made that point of maybe he read her mind and heard the name of the god but didn't know the name of the god. But the story didn't tell us that, so I can't know that was happening because we've been hearing the story from Jace's perspective. So if he was doing that, it would have probably said that.
Right, and it really should have, if he was having a split-second thought of, I shouldn't read her mind.
Correct.
Because, I just told Jorianne that I shouldn't do that. Or I'm deciding not to do it to Gideon, I won't do it to her either,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
But we didn't, all of those pieces weren't filled in.
Right, it just wasn't part of the discussion. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm just writing my own story in my head, and so I'm upset because my expectations weren't met of this other story that I created for myself. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it could have been a sticking point of he didn't talk about this. Why didn't he talk about this? And so he changes her mind, and I feel like I used this phrase earlier, but I feel like it would have hit differently if he had chosen to do that. If if it had been a point of growth in one way or another, of being like, okay, really serious situation, Ulamog is here, I'm scared for my life, I'm scared for the refugees' lives, somebody has to go back, it has to be her, I don't know why she doesn't get it, last ditch effort, I'm changing her mind. You know, last resort, it has to happen. It was just, I don't know, it was just odd to me. Maybe I don't remember that we get another story later where he talks about a little bit of guilt in that regard.
But I think it did that same thing again, where it makes you think that we're seeing it from Jace's perspective when realistically we're seeing it from Jorian's.
Well, because it did switch to Jorian's perspective kind of immediately after he did it, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, maybe later on we'll get Jace's kind of afterthoughts of that, because we weren't with Jace after he did it. We were with Jace up to the point where he decided to do it, and then it switched over to Jorian, who was sitting there going, oh, I convinced Jace that he had to go ahead without me, and I had to... Didn't I? Damn it, Jace! And so that, you know, and that's kind of how it ends. So, again...
So maybe, like, on his trek to the Eye, we'll get to hear from him, like, it sucks that I had to do that, but I had to do that, kind of thing. Or
maybe he'll be Jace, and he'll be too focused on the mission, and... Not that that's not important, but at the same time, you know... But, I don't know. I think the ending was good, but I think, you know, it's like me sitting here being like, my way would have been better, which is not, I don't know. That's not exactly what I'm saying, but at the same time, I don't know that I can justify it any further, so maybe that is the case. And if you think so, I would love to hear from you in the comments, but I don't know. It just, it feels different to me.
That this story is a bit shell-like, and it's missing the meat and potatoes part of it.
Okay.
And next week, we'll have that, or you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
sure.
Maybe it's just a bit hollow still for this. Just this particular story, is waiting for the filler.
Yeah.
To be filled in with the stuff it's missing.
Yeah. I don't know. So I don't know. That's how I felt about the ending. I would love to hear other people's opinions. I really hope that everybody has enjoyed this video, has enjoyed. Or is going to enjoy their holiday season, has been enjoying their holiday season and the end of this crazy year.
Or just the winter time.
Yes.
If you don't celebrate any holidays at all.
I'm under no illusions that, you know, January 1st comes along and everything's all hunky-dory. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, a lot of people like to think of the new year as new beginnings and a new hope, and etc. And so, whatever. Here's to hoping.
Yeah.
And I do hope, like I said, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope everybody is doing well, as we said at the beginning, continuing to stay safe and happy and healthy.
Very important.
Don't forget, like this video. We will have another JaAR next week. Even though it will be New Year's Eve, we will still have it up. So don't you worry. We hope that you will be back with us for that. We will have streams nonstop. We will have streams on Christmas Day, on New Year's Day.
Yes.
We will have streams on the Mondays as well, the 21st and the 28th. So be here for those if you can, 8 to 10 p.m., no matter which day, Monday or Friday. That's Eastern time. If you are available, the VODs will be on the channel, so if you miss it, don't worry. But don't forget also, subscribe, ring the bell, etc. Super helpful to us. We would love to hear you in the comments. So continuing to talk about these stories, continuing to look forward to the Kaldheim stories that are coming up in the next few weeks, joining us.
Or seemingly in the next few weeks.
Yeah, almost certainly. Almost certainly.
We'll see what they do.
With the set coming out, almost certainly.
Yeah.
But yes, so all of you joining all of us in looking forward to those and in reading other stories in the interim, and keeping up that Vorthos spirit is another way of showing off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
We got Vorthos spirit, Vorthos pride, lots of things. Again, happy holidays to one and all. We will see you next week, but if you miss it, a happy new year as well. And so, for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.